Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is a weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We play local unsigned and or independent music. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. You may have noticed that we've moved our timings around, so we used to be Tuesdays at 7 PM, we are now on Wednesdays at 8 PM, that is our new home for the foreseeable future. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk, that's dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anyone with MP3s to share and local arts news. Don't hesitate to get in touch. We are repeated on Monday nights on Wickham Sound. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts, so please do check us out on those and leave a positive review on your podcast platform of choice. And you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. So this week we're going to be chatting to Chris Blackwell, who is a local musician, open mic organiser, and he is the creative mind behind Festibell, which is happening at the Bell in Prince's Risborough this weekend. We will hear more about that in a little bit, and also I will tell you now, all of the music we share, all of the acts that you listen to in today's show will be performing at Festibell. But before we do that, we're going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story, and this is a new one of mine. This is the 813 Trolleybus, and this is set in Riga, and will be part of my new collection, Snowbound, whenever I get around to releasing it. The 813 Trolleybus. It was snowing in Riga, but there was nothing unusual about that. In fact, it was shaping up to be a normal day of Soviet oppression and crippling hunger in the bread lines. Egvars Graudens was a pretty normal kid, a typical 14-year-old of the early 80s who was obsessed with Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, though unlike his American compatriots, he had to get his cassettes from illegal bootlegs and imports. The authorities had banned most of the music he liked, but people made copies and distributed them in hushed whispers at underground concerts and the backs of classrooms. Music was like a drug. Egvars was addicted to the stuff, and he could only get hold of it by asking the right people a couple of questions. His parents hated him listening to Western music, but not because of the music itself. They were worried what it would mean if he was caught in possession. His mother, Ilarija, was what passed as a housewife. She got up before dawn each morning and had already left the house by the time that Egvars got up for school. She kicked the day off queuing up for rations, bringing home the breads and meats that she had a talent for stretching out until the next ration day. She queued in a different place each morning, sometimes standing in line from before dawn until after midday, but she didn't always walk away with something in her hands. But that was just a part of life. Her father, Vigans, was a poet and a night watchman, in that order. He worked 7 days a week from sundown to sunup, guarding the factories and calling in the cops on the not infrequent occasions when someone fancied their chances. Vigans didn't always know what the factories produced, but times were tough and people were desperate. Those desperate enough would think nothing of breaking and entering, swiping as many boxes and crates as they could get their hands on and worrying about selling it later on. The nights were long and lonely, so Vigans whiled away the hours by writing poetry in his notebook. He knew dozens of poets, and most of them worked the same kinds of jobs so that they could spend as much time writing as they could. He also knew that most of them wrote work that criticised the Soviet government, although none of them would have dared to admit it. It was an open secret that even the government-approved poets who wrote Soviet propaganda had sheaves of political stuff buried in jam jars in their back gardens. Egvars knew about his father's poetry, but he rarely thought about it. He would have been much more interested if his father had been writing lyrics for the bands he listened to. That morning he was listening to Black Sabbath on his imported Walkman while getting ready for school. He was running a little late, like always, and so he hardly noticed the rumbling in his stomach as he skipped breakfast again and rushed out of the door. It was just coming up to 8 AM and school didn't start for another hour, but he faced a lengthy commute each day just to get there. He went to Pulkstenu Tornaskola, which the students just called Tornis for short, and his commute to school meant he had to take first a tram and then a trolleybus. He just considered himself lucky that he didn't have to walk like some of his classmates. It was too cold to read his book while he waited for the tram, but once he boarded the thing, he settled into a rear corner and unpacked a battered paperback of a Zygmunt Skujins novel, which he quickly lost himself in. His fingers shook as he turned the pages, and he alternated which hand he held it with so that he could warm the other up inside his jumper. He was so absorbed in the book that he almost missed his stop, and it was only as he disembarked the tram that he realised he was alone. All of the other passengers had disappeared. It was quiet, and the silence itself was disconcerting. As a city kid, even under the Soviets, Egvars was used to being surrounded by other people. There was almost always someone somewhere, even if they were just a distant silhouette at the end of a side street. He wasn't used to having the entire city to himself. The silence remained for the couple of streets he had to walk along to get from the tram stop to the trolleybus stop. The trolleybus was like the offspring of a tram and a bus. It had a trolley pole and drew electricity from the cables above it like a tram, but it had a bus's wheels and didn't use rails. Thanks to its onboard rechargeable battery, it wasn't confined to the parts of the city that had cables because it could travel for short distances without them. In short, it was a useful way of getting from one part of town to another. Every morning and every evening, Eggvars had to race across the snow to make it from the bus stop to the trolleybus stop. Along the way, he had to pass through a wide open square, which was bordered by tall buildings and which was normally full of pedestrians and workers. But on that day, it was eerily silent, like something from an episode of The Twilight Zone, which Eggvars had seen at a friend's house on an imported VHS. Eggvars' trolleybus stop was on one of the streets that adjoined the square. The layout of the buildings and the slope that the square had been built on meant that he could see the trolleybus coming and race after it if he had to, and that was exactly what happened that morning. He checked his watch as he ran and saw that it was 8:13 AM. The trolleybus was running early, perhaps because there was still no one around. And when he arrived at the stop, spewing hot air from his lungs as he heaved for breath, he saw that he was the only one there too. That was unheard of, because the route was a busy one and Eggvars was used to hanging from the straps in the trolleybus. And yet the trolleybus was empty. All of the seats were free and the only person on board was the driver, who was staring at Eggvars with bug-like eyes through a thick pair of spectacles and beckoning for him to board the bus. He had a gaunt, almost skeletal face, and his clothes were spattered with mud and dirt, looking badly in need of a wash. He looked more like a farmer than a bus driver, and Eggvars didn't recognise him as one of the regulars, although he didn't pay too much attention to the faces of the people who shuttled him to and from Torness. He also smelled like the grave, as though he'd buried his uniform beneath the soil and dug it back up again before his shift. "Where is everyone?" Eggvars asked, taking a step towards the trolleybus but refraining from climbing aboard. "This route's normally one of the busiest in the city." The driver shrugged and then shook his head, but he still didn't say anything. Then he reached out a long, bony arm and beckoned once more for Eggvars to board the trolleybus. Eggvars began, casting his eyes up and down the length of the trolleybus. "I'm not so sure I should..." The driver shrugged again and ignored Eggvars as he asked a few further questions. A minute passed and Eggvars had made no move to climb aboard and the driver had shown no sign of responding to his questions. They were at an impasse. The driver made one last gesture to the seats at the back of the trolleybus, then nodded pointedly at the doors. Eggvars shook his head and stepped back, seeking shelter inside the trolleybus stop. The driver slumped back into his seat and gunned the ignition, steering the trolleybus deeper into the city. Eggvars checked his watch, which read 8:18 AM. The day that followed was one of the strangest of his life. He waited there at the trolleybus stop for what felt like a lifetime, slowly growing colder and colder as the winter freeze worked its way beneath his clothes and into his skin. He was dressed for the weather, but he hadn't been expecting to spend hour after hour with his skin exposed to the elements, and there was still no one in sight. After the first couple of hours had passed and he'd resigned himself to the fact that the trolleybuses weren't running on schedule, he gave in to temptation and went for a wander. He first returned to the large plaza, which remained empty, and then he struck off along some of the side streets, knocking on doors at random and trying the handles when there wasn't an answer. But all of the doors were locked and all of the shops were closed. Even the public toilets were shut. As hard as he tried, and he gave it everything he had, he couldn't find another person and he couldn't find shelter. He was all alone, lost in a part of the city that he knew like the back of his hand. He was reminded again of the Twilight Zone. Eggvars had no choice but to go back to the stop and to wait for whatever came first, death or the trolleybus. It was so cold that he couldn't read his book. Even at the height of the afternoon, the temperature was below freezing. As the day progressed, still with no sign of another living soul, the temperatures dropped and Eggvars retreated further into the corner of the shelter, pulling his arms inside his sweater as though he was impersonating a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. After what seemed like an ice age, the sun went down. After what seemed like two more of them, the sun came back up. The first person showed up at 8:13 AM the following morning, assuming that Eggvars' watch was still running on time. The first was soon joined by a second and then a third as pedestrians and motorists alike returned to the silent streets of Riga. Unfortunately for Eggvars, he was too far gone to notice. It was a time before mobile phones, and public payphones were a thing for the Western world and not Eastern Europe beneath the iron fist of the Soviets. It didn't take long for Eggvars to be found, but there was a hefty delay as help was summoned, a phone was located and an ambulance called. He was rushed through the streets to a nearby hospital at around 10 AM, suffering from a combination of frostbite, pneumonia and hypothermia. In the back of the ambulance, as they worked feverishly to save his leg, the paramedics asked Eggvars what had happened. He explained as best as he could, given that he was half conscious and plagued with hallucinations. Mostly he just repeated, the 8:13 trolleybus, the 8:13 trolleybus, the 8:13 trolleybus. But there isn't an 813 trolleybus, the taller of the two paramedics replied. You must be mistaken, kid. Hold on, the other paramedic said. That's not quite true. There was an 813 trolleybus, remember? Only... I don't like to talk about that. You were called out to the scene, weren't you? The second paramedic said. What was it that the investigation found? The driver was suicidal, the taller man replied. He drove it into the river and killed everyone on board. They retired the 813 after that as a mark of respect. Yeah, and because they couldn't find anyone to drive it. The 813 trolleybus, Egvars said. The 813 trolleybus. How's his pulse? It's fading. The medic replied. We've got a fight on our hands to save this kid. The 813 trolleybus, Egvars said. Better radio ahead. Chris is dead. I wish the roads were as empty as he said they were when he saw the 813. That was the 813 trolleybus by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Radio Generation with Gene Genie.
Like a man, but he smiles like a reptile. She loves him, but just for a short while. She's scratching the sand, won't let go of his hand. He says he's a beautician, sells you nutrition, and keeps all your dead hair for making up underwear. Poor little greenie. Genie lives on his back. Genie loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. So simple-minded, can't drive his module. Lights on the neon, seats in the capsule. Loves to be loved. Loves to be loved. Outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. Genie lives on his back. Genie loves Jimmy Stacks. He's outrageous, he screams and he balls. Genie, let yourself go. You betcha.
Guess I'll get drunk again. Confess all my feelings to a stranger. 'Cause with friends like you, who needs enemies? With friends like you, and with friends like you, who needs enemies? With friends like you. Guess I'm toxic. I tear myself apart. My own worst enemy. Where do I even start? I've been stupid in love, and I'm still stupid for it. Scared to be on my own. It's nothing personal. 'Cause with friends like you, who needs enemies? With friends like you, and with friends like you, who needs enemies? With friends like you. Wish I could shed these feelings and run away. Wish I could shed these feelings and run away. Run away, run away, run away. Wish I could shed these feelings and run away. Run away, run away, run away. Wish I could shed these feelings and run away. Run away, run away, run away. 'Cause with friends like you, oh, with friends like you, oh, with friends like you.
That was Friends Like You by the Phenomenauts, and before that we had Gene Genie by Radio Generation. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to chat to Chris Blackwell, who is a musician and event organiser who is organising Festibell at the Bell in Prince's Risborough this weekend. The first question is not necessarily music related. You may or may not have an answer, but it's an old tradition, which is, what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Last book that I read. Can I be completely honest with you?
You can.
The last book that I read was The Gruffalo.
Nice.
Yeah. My son is a big fan of The Gruffalo and The Gruffalo's Child.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he gets me to read the Gruffalo to him, and Joe, my wife, has to read Gruffalo's Child.
That's adorable. Well, I
Yeah.
will say, I mean, I don't have kids, and I've read both of those, and in fact, I'm also like of the generation where I was too early for the Gruffalo, so I don't have a good reason. Like, I was just 25 reading the Gruffalo, as you do. So,
You
so
don't need a reason, mate. You don't need a
no, you
reason.
don't.
It's
You
a
don't.
great book. Both of them are great books, and there's
Would
something in there for
recommend.
everyone, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, cool. So I want to talk to you about a bunch of different stuff. I think a good place to start would be if we talk about your open mic, because you run an open mic at the Bell. I wondered
I do, yes.
how long have you been running that open mic? When is it, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I've been running that one for about 9 years now. Obviously during lockdown we didn't do much,
Hmm.
so I don't know if you can count it as 9 years, more like 7.5. But I'm going to go with 9 because I get a decent anniversary next year then.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we do that once a month at the moment. We do fluctuate on which Sunday it is, um, because work commitments. So we usually either do the third or the fourth Sunday. But we do post up about it, so we've always got the date out there if anyone wants to find it. We are absolutely happy to have anyone of any standard playing there. We get some people that have been playing for years, and we get some people walking through the door who have been, this is the first open mic that they're going to. And I still think it's important to let people play if they want to, if they're comfortable to play it. If they want to play, then you don't turn them down.
Hmm.
You don't ever say we haven't got time or we haven't got space or anything like that, because that could be the point that they decide not to try again.
Yeah.
So you always encourage them to do the first one, and you know what, it might go brilliantly, it might all go to hell, but it doesn't matter because you've done it and you're there, and everyone around you will encourage you to carry on and try again if you need to, or give you some kind of constructive criticism about um, where you could improve, or offer you tips on playing anything. So yeah, it's very important to have um, seasoned professionals, if you want, right down to the people who have literally just picked up a guitar that day or whatever instrument they want. Because we're
Yeah.
quite happy to have anything down. It's not just guitars. If you want to bring keyboards down, we've had a hurdy-gurdy before, which was just incredible. Whatever you want, we're kind of open. But I think the whole point of it being an open mic is that it's an open mic.
Yeah.
Play what you want. Play what you want. We're not going to be disrespectful or anything, because if that's what you've chosen to do, then that's what you're going to do. And I think that's a reasonably healthy attitude to take, and I think that's why I'm still doing it after 9 years.
I was going to say, I think that's probably why you're still going where other open mics might have folded. And I wanted to continue to chat about the Bell. So that's the Bell in Princess Risborough. I should point that out as well. But so speaking of the Bell, there's a festival coming up. So what can you tell us about that?
There is Festibell is we rebranded last year. It was Belfest. Rich, the landlord, decided that he wanted to go with his original suggestion for it, and I think Festibell kind of works better. I'll be honest with you. So Festibell is a 2-day beer and music festival. We have live music both days. We start around midday, go on till about 9-10 at night. We're doing it again this year for Macmillan Cancer Support, which we feel is a very important charity. I think a lot of people would know somebody who has benefited from them in their lifetime. I think a lot of people might not have made it through particular situations if it wasn't for the help of people like Macmillan. So so last year we decided to raise money for them, and it went really, really well. It was the best one we've ever done. We raised the most amount of money. We raised £650 for them last year,
Brilliant.
which was the most we've ever got in one weekend. So we've decided to do it again this year for Macmillan, as one of the regulars, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, but one of Ricky's regulars has recently benefited from the support quite a lot, and is in recovery, and so we feel it's a good idea to raise money for Macmillan again this year.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 days. We've got the Saturday and Sunday, the 5th and 6th of August. Different foods each day this year, okay, because it was just a little bit awkward. We've kind of thrown this together a little bit last minute. Caribbean food on the Saturday. I'm not entirely sure we've ever done Caribbean food before. Can't remember if we have. But on the Sunday we've got pizzas as well, so artisan pizzas. We've got stuff for the kids to do. We've got bouncy castles. I don't know if we've got a face painter this year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope so because she's really lovely.
I mean, you mentioned the face painters. I really like that you had the temporary tattoos last year as well, which were quite cool. You know, I think the adults enjoyed those as much as the kids did.
Well, it's pretty universal, those things, isn't it? So
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
I mean, it's for the kids, really, isn't it? But you know, it's one of those things. It's like when you're watching kids' TV, you know full well it's for the kids, but secretly you kind of enjoy it yourself.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Same with the Gruffalo.
Yeah.
Who are some of the bands who are going to perform this year?
Okay, would you like a rundown in no particular order?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so on the Saturday, we have all wonderful people. We have John Napier, we have Leslie Jane, we have the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, we have Dan Brennan, we have Nick Atkinson, the Phenomenauts, Radio Generation, and Bolo Bolo. And on the Sunday, we have Laura Williams, we have Eva and Jethro, we have Flambe Hombres, we have a band called The Ilk. Now, I wonder why you have a vested interest in this one, Dane. We have the Bozza band with the brilliant Bob Newell. We have Matt Love from Element doing an acoustic set, and I'm apparently supposed to be doing a few songs as well if I can figure out some family-friendly ones that I can pluck out of the repertoire. So there we go. We've got 2 days packed full of live music. That's acoustic performers and bands together. So acoustic during the day, bands towards the evening, just to round things off. And if it's anything like last year, I think it's going to be a brilliant weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the weather was really nice last year as well, so I'm sure you've got your fingers crossed for that as well. What are some of the go-to songs that you like to perform?
Well, I'll be honest with you. A lot of the stuff that I tend to get asked for at the moment, it's things that you can't really play on your show. Because I've always liked doing songs that other people don't do, because I feel that because other people do them, there's no point in me doing them.
Yeah,
because you can always hear someone else do them, and that's fine, and they'll probably do it 10 times better than I would. So I like to try and get some of the more obscure songs in. I like doing Goldie Looking Chain, or Mr. B the Gentleman Rhymer, a few Mitch Benn songs. If I had to go for maybe more mainstream, I might do some sort of Pet Shop Boys, Robbie Williams kind of things, maybe a bit of Stereophonics. But you know, it's kind of standard fare for a lot of the open mics, really. But it's familiar, and people like familiar, and you know, familiar makes people feel comfortable, and that's what you want, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably for a full list of the songs that I do, just have a listen to the lyrics of Dave's open mic song, and that's probably the majority of the ones that I do.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Chris Blackwell about Festibell, and this is the Sepia Tone Folk Collective with Help You Out.
Baby, let me help you out. Darling, if you need me, just sing and shout, and I'll be there, just pick up the phone. Don't wanna think that you're on your own, so if you think that you need some company, don't be scared to come reach out to me. Don't hide away if you're feeling lonely. It's okay, oh baby, let me help you out. Baby, let me take you out. Give me the benefit of the doubt, and I'll be there, we can hit the town. I'll make you laugh if you're feeling down. If you think that you need to give your mind a rest, have a chat and get things off your chest. Deep inside you know it's for the best, and it's okay, oh baby, let me take you out. you smile. I can see it's been quite a while since you were free, so put on your shoes. We'll take a walk and talk about your blues, and I know about the pain that you've been through, the rage and disdain I see you too. But please let me explain something to you. You'll be okay, baby, let me make you smile. So tell me what you need from me. Tell me the guy you want me to be, and I'll be there, just say the word. I want to help, but I haven't heard. So if you think that you maybe want some space, or perhaps you need a friendly face to get your head back to your happy place, that's okay. Tell me what you need from me. If I cross the line, when we're together I forget the time. We're just the same like 2 in 1. They say time flies when you're having fun. Babe, you were lost and it was me who found you. And although this advice may astound you, just think about the people that you keep around you, and you'll be okay. Tell me if I cross the line.
That was Help You Out by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to jump back into our conversation with Festibell organiser Chris Blackwell.
Cool, and I want to ask about your guitar, because your guitar's got a ton of stickers on it. I wondered if you could tell us about a few of the stickers on there and where you got them.
Oh, do you know what? My sticker collection has been anything vaguely geek culture that I like, from either my childhood or now. And things that you should never ever be embarrassed to admit that you like. So I've had Garbage Pail Kid stuff on there. I've had Simon Pegg stuff on there. Some Star Wars things. Some of the artwork that I've done as well. That I kind of, like a sneaky little way of letting people see it without having to ask people to buy it. But yeah, I just like things like people get a reference or they don't. And
Yeah.
if you get a reference, then you can have a little moment between two people. And if you don't get a reference, it's fine because they've seen something new anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always the way that, that you get introduced to new things. Like, I have no idea what that's about. I might ask. And there you go. And then you might learn something. And you might find something out that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of an overhaul at the moment. I'm sort of stripping it all back and starting over again. So I'm trying to find new designs or make some new designs myself that I want to put on there just to try and
Shake things up a bit. Yeah.
Well, you need it every now and then, don't you? You need a fresh start. So
yeah, that's
happy
it.
to do that with my artwork as well.
And a lot of people use that as an excuse to buy a new guitar.
Yeah, well, I did. I bought a new one last year just because I felt like it, and it was one of the cheapest guitars I could find, and apparently it's one of the nicest sounding guitars that anyone's heard as well. So, sometimes you don't have to spend an absolute fortune on a guitar to make it sound nice. You can just stumble across one. Oh, okay, I'm going to give them a plug there. It's a company called Lindo, down on the coast, and I think I paid about £250 for this guitar, and the first time I played it out live, people were like going, "Oh my god, that's so nice!" Like, how do you get it to sound like that? I don't. It was just out of the box like that, and that's how it came. And I think I've changed the strings on it once, and it's still sounding really nice. So yeah, you don't have to spend an absolute fortune. You can if you want, of course. So there's always going to be someone willing to sell you a guitar for £1,000.
Yeah.
And if that's what you want to do, go and do it. But if you want to buy a cheaper guitar for 250 quid, then do that as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
It should be entirely up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with.
And talking about geek culture, I don't know if you're still doing this, so can you give us an update on you were running like a clothing brand / store? Is that still going? And if so, where can people find it?
Yeah, I have a store on Redbubble. My shop name is Chris Stuff 23, and it's either dumb ideas that I've had that I thought would look good as a picture, or things that I just genuinely, if other people wanted it, and that was the way to get it done. Really, was to upload it to a store and buy it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's done all right. Some of it's actually picked up quite nicely. So there's been people in all sorts of countries that have bought my stuff, which I'm very
Brilliant.
grateful for, because I don't expect anything. I don't expect anyone to buy it. It's like,
Yeah.
if you like it, fair enough. If you don't, never mind. It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, my stuff's gone all over the world now, and I'm just kind of a little bit weirded out by it. But yeah, it's nice. It's some of the stuff gets a really good reaction, and some of the stuff completely passes everyone by. And yeah, either way, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I've had a little bit of a break from that for the last few months, because we've been quite busy with my son. We've moved house and
Mm.
everything as well. So yeah, I'm going to try and get back into that after Festibell, which is the
Yeah.
5th, 6th of August. Yeah, I'm going to try and start working on some new designs after that, I think.
Cool. And am I right in thinking you had a radio show of your own at one time? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
I did have a radio show, yes. At one point, yes, I had. I did a show on Wickham Town with Mark. We did a lot of live music. We recorded bands upstairs, did interviews with them, and it was a lot of fun. To be honest with you, it was very stressful, but it was a lot of fun. And I'm a dad now, and I don't have time to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe one day when he's all grown up and I'm like 60 or something like that,
Yeah.
maybe maybe I'll look into it again. But yeah, I enjoyed that. That was a nice time, a nice experience to do that show. And
Yeah.
still very grateful for all the bands that came in and spent time with us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you actually, so
Okay.
who is Mark, and how did / do the two of you work together?
Right. Well, Mark was a colleague at my regular job, who I accidentally roped in to doing an open mic with me, because many years ago, when I used to drink, I used to say yes to a lot of things without thinking through properly. So I got asked one night in O'Neill's in Wickham, "You're in a band, would you do an open mic for us?" And I went, "Yeah," because I may have been about 4 or 5 pints in. And then didn't really think about it till the next day. I was like, I've never done this before. I've never I've never played on my own in front of people, never done anything. And my good friend Mark, had done a D-Day night raising money, I think, for cancer research, a few months before that. So I asked him to join me. And he said yes as well, because what's the worst that could happen? And we found
Yeah.
out what the worst is that could happen, because it did happen. But we fought through it anyway. And then we ended up doing open mics together for quite a few years, for about 7 years, I think, in the end. But he has since moved away down to Devon. But he does come back and do the sound with me at Festibell.
Mhm.
It's nice. So I'll get to see him again in a couple of weeks' time.
Take us back round to talking about Festibell, because as we know, what are the dates for it again?
The dates are the 5th and 6th. That's Saturday the 5th and Sunday the 6th of August. We'll be setting up from about midday. So we're kicking off properly at about 2, both days, but we'll be doing sound checks and warm ups and what have you. And just come down early anyway, because the more you've had, the more likely you are to put money in the bucket. So
Yeah. And to have a dance, yeah.
and to have a dance, yeah, which is always nice for people performing, if people are enjoying the music. So
Yeah.
but I
And
think there's something for everyone there this weekend. So
yeah, no, and there certainly was last year as well. And so what's the most difficult thing about putting on a festival?
Thankfully, the most difficult thing about putting on a festival is not my responsibility. That's down to the pub. I'm quite happy to pass all that on. But yeah, Rich at the Bell does all of the. You have to buy an extra stock. You have to make sure that everyone's available. You have to get the food sorted. You have to get you have to get your bouncy castle sorted. You have to make sure that the parking's okay. You have to make sure that all the advertising has gone out and what have you. I get the relatively easy thing of just organising who's going to be performing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which thankfully, due to the amount of people we've had coming to the open mics over the years, you know, there's quite a lot of people that I can call on to do things like this.
Yeah.
And you know, 99% of the time, people are always happy to get involved, especially if it's for a good cause like this, like Macmillan Cancer Support. So yeah. So thankfully, my stress and my headaches and my receding grey hairline is relatively unaffected by festivals at this point.
Awesome. And the last question, it's technically 2 in 1. So it's what have you got planned next, and where can people go to find out more? So obviously we have Festibell, and then what's coming up after that, and where can people follow you?
You know what? All I'm planning on doing at the moment after this, I'm going to have a little decompress like we always do after this. I'm going to carry on with the open mic at the Bell. I'm gradually getting out to more open mics in the area now, because it's been a little bit awkward to do so for the past couple of years because work commitments and everything, and you know, having a little boy.
Yeah.
So yeah, all I'm going to do really is just sort of try and get out to a few more local open mics. Carry on doing the one at the Bell, which, as I say, we advertise several weeks in advance, so people always know when it's going to be on. And yeah, if you want to find anything out about me, I don't know why you'd want to, but yeah, just find me on Facebook. You can find the Bell's Facebook page as well, because all my stuff will be posted up on there too. That's the Bell Risborough. And also you can find me on Instagram on Chris Blackwell 23 if you so wish.
Big thank you to Chris Blackwell for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is my band, The Ilk, with Yes She Does. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And it's time for us to head over to the Oak Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Very best of the Loving Spoonful. I used to have a 12-inch EP of 4 of the Loving Spoonful's best known songs. Daydream, Summer in the City, Do You Believe in Magic and Nashville Cats. They were all songs I remembered from when they were hits back in the mid-60s and I was much younger. I also knew the song Darling Be Home Soon because there was a version by Slade that got played on the radio. I was never sure about the Loving Spoonful when I first became serious about music. The name seemed to suggest that they were a bubblegum act, like the 1910 Fruit Gum Company. It was not till I found out that John Sebastian, their lead singer, was a serious songwriter and was at Woodstock that I took a more serious look at their hits. Most of the songs that are not the famous ones are quite simple productions, a bit folky and a bit country, with little about them to make them seem dated. Songs like You and Me and Rain on the Roof and jug band music. However, the song that I think is a forgotten gem is She's Still a Mystery to Me, which is a brilliant lyric drenched in glorious Technicolor mid-60s production. There is even some harpsichord. In a similar vein is You Didn't Have to Be So Nice, another slice of 60s sunshine pop, almost like the Turtles. The best known songs are probably Summer in the City, which has the traffic horns and the claustrophobic feel of a hot city traffic jam, and Daydream, which is one of the simple productions. The guitar has a lazy swing, and there is that whistle, almost like he's sitting on the dock of the bay. It is one for those who believe in magic because the magic's in the music, and the music was in the Loving Spoonful, the very best of the Loving Spoonful.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Chris Blackwell for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. Be sure to check out the Bell's Facebook page, the Bell Princess Risborough, to learn more about Festibell happening this weekend. You can also find us on Facebook while you're at it. We are, if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And if you want to reach out to me here at the studio, you can do so on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to love you and leave you. This is one last tune. This is the Sepia Tone Folk Collective again with I'm Not Really Here. I'll catch you next week.
Life can seem a vicious game, and you know love is just the same. Lay down your cards, give it a try. Can you see the girl with me? Well, she ain't my property, just don't come and ask me why. I'm tired of all their prying eyes, and I'm bored of all the lies and the gossip that I hear. I'll sage love songs just for you, lyrics you can misconstrue and hear what you want to hear. I gave you what I had inside, then watched you take me for a ride, though I tried to be sincere. I'm tired of your lying eyes, and I'm bored of all the sighs and the tears when you're near. But if you're ever feeling down, you know I'll always be around. I can't seem to stay away, so go. You must let go of my hand. You're not my woman, I'm not your man. There's a kindness being cruel. You'll go and try and play this cool. Ignore your heart, play by the rules. Then it's me that feels the fool. I'm sick and tired of my disguise, so I'll just say my goodbyes and then slowly disappear. 'Cause I'm not really here, 'cause I'm not really here, I'm not really here.